So the next two speakers we have are equally accomplished. We have Raul Hernandez, who is a partner at Hood & Strong, who is the moderator. And then we have Thomas Corte, who used to work at Google, and he's the founder of AngelPad. And they'll be talking about angel funding, VC funding, again, so many options. Please give them a big hand.
Saturday morning in a dark conference room. Very good.
Well, good morning. Thomas Corte from AngelPad. We got a couple of questions for you regarding angel funding, venture capital funding, any other options. Basically, the first question is, what's the difference between angel funding and VC funding?
Big difference. Good, really good question, Raul. But before I answer, I want to get a quick read on who in the room is thinking about starting a company, is kind of at a seed stage, very early in the room. Just a show of hands. Oh, all right, fantastic. Who in the room is a source of money? Angel investor, professional VCs? Right, everyone else, look around. Those are the guys you need to get to. All right, so back to the question. I think angel funding or getting money from angel investors is quite different from getting money from venture capitalists. An angel investor usually is a private individual who uses their own money to start companies, to help start companies get off the ground. The way to approach an angel investor is very much like you would someone that you've worked with, someone that someone, it's very casual, and they basically get excited about you, about your company, about your team, about what you're working on. Their rationale is usually a lot less well thought through as a venture capitalist. A venture capitalist has a thesis. A venture capitalist has LPs, limited partners, who give him money to invest, and he or she does this professionally. So he approaches this very, very differently and really looks at the multiple returns over time. Ravi earlier talked about that the sweet spot for venture capitalists is kind of $2 to $5 million. If you invest that much money, you have to have an outcome that's in the certainly hundreds of millions of dollars and possibly even billion-dollar exits. So angel investors, generally speaking, are a great source of money very early on in the life of your company. As you're building a venture-backed company, you eventually have to take money from VCs or want to take money from VCs.
Okay, great. As far as meeting some of these folks, how do you go about meeting an angel investor? How do you go about meeting VC capital?
You looked around, all the hands up, go there. No. It's really, I think it's more an art than a science. I think you need to really look at the fundamentals of your business and work on your business and your team and your traction first and foremost. Raising funding is an extension of doing those things well. The better you are putting together a great team, picking a business that is very, very interesting in a market that's very, very large, and then kind of starting to build something that shows that there's traction. And traction really is just the proof that what you say will happen. So if you say, we can build a company that, changes the way HR managers hire, something, pick whatever. If you have a few HR managers that actually use the product, there's some inkling that this actually might work, and it's not just an idea. So the better you are with all those things, the easier the fundraising is going to be. And I think especially if you are in Silicon Valley, I always say anyone over 50 is most likely an angel investor in Silicon Valley. Most people have made some money here and understand the game of this higher risk investment in angel investing. So you can probably approach every single manager that you've ever had working for a technology company and ask them for, tell them what they think about your company first of all, and then ask them possibly for money. I think there's also more formal ways to access capital. Certainly, I'm a big fan of AngelList. You should all be on AngelList. If you are a founder, about to be founder, investor, AngelList, angel.co really is a great source. I think it's really the only source where you have a lot of information about who's investing, what they're investing in, and you can approach them right there. Again, the better your team, the better your market, the better your traction, the easier those meetings will be.
Perfect. And Tomas, what do you think about crowdfunding as a viable option when it comes to raising capital?
So I'm a fan of crowdfunding. I think there's a lot of confusion about, generally speaking, what crowdfunding is. And I can differentiate it in a few different places. So there's the crowdfunding where you as an investor, quote unquote, get a t-shirt or get the product that is about to be built. So those are the, let's say, Indiegogo and Kickstarters. It's not really, you don't have an equity stake, you don't hold a piece of the company as an investor in that. So that's generally called crowdfunding. And then we have the crowdfunding that is hopefully about to be legal, where people that are not accredited investors, so people that have a household income less than $200,000, net worth less than, I think, a couple of $1 million definition now, can invest in companies and hold an equity stake legally. To date, that is not legal, but hopefully that's going to happen very, very soon. And I think that's a very interesting, viable option. And then the third part is really the crowdfunding that is happening already. When you look at AngelList, I sound like a spokesperson for AngelList, don't I? But when you look at AngelList, there's a button. If you're an investor, an accredited investor, there's a button that says invest in this company, and you can literally, invest in $1,000 increments, 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 in these companies. And as a founder, as a founding team, I think it's actually a great option to get commitments from people and to have smaller, get the first couple of $100K that way. So I think I would look at all of them. If you're building a physical product that people can relate to in the consumer space, let's say, I don't know, flying robots for kids to, film baseball, something like that, crazy. I just come up with this stuff, so it's not a great example. Kickstarter might be a really good option because people get excited about this. Half of you are nodding. I'm like, yeah, I want this for my kids. So you might put $100 or $200 in this to maybe get, one of the first 100 that are being built. If you are building a semiconductor company, I don't think Kickstarter is the way to go. Angel investors might not be the way to go because you actually need a lot more money to get to a prototype. So it really has to do with what kind of company you're building and the amount of money you need and matching that to the source where it comes from.
Good. So besides the actual seed funding that you get from investors, is there any other type of benefit you get, management advice, important contacts that you should be looking for in those relationships?
Yes, you should. The best founders really pick their investors well. If you are an investor meeting, you are not there to ask for money. It's going to come if things go well. You are there to assess if this is the right investor for your business. Of course you want their money, right? No question. But if you don't think that this is the right investor for your company, best case, he or she is really helpful. Most cases, he or she is okay and is not hurtful. And worst case, it's someone that looks over your shoulder and really lives through you vicariously and wants to do what you do and calls you every 3 days with a new idea that you should be working on. The latter is the money that you should forego. You really want investors that invest in you, so you do the work and you have the vision and they can stand right behind you, but never look over your shoulder. Never direct you. They are not your boss. You are the boss. They are the people that should stand right next to you. So I think with that, you should interview investors the same way they interview you as you're going into fundraising. I think you can expect from angel investors, it's harder to expect something. They don't do this professionally. This is, I call it a hobby or maybe financial diversification. They should all have contacts. So you can ask for investors for all kinds of contacts. An investor that has 0 contacts, in Silicon Valley or wherever your company is probably not a great investor because he is either really new or just looks at this as an asset class diversification. And if you know that's the case, it's fine too. As long as they don't hurt, take their money. If you look really for these couple of value-add investors where you say, look, I really want this person. You do all the research online, what they've invested in. They understand what you do. They've maybe built a company like that 10 years ago. Those are the ones that you really want to associate yourself with. You want them to be investors, and you really should ask them to be advisors too. Quick word on advisors versus investors. I see a lot of companies that come with an investor with a pitch deck, and there's 2 pages full of advisors. And I look at these advisors, and some of them look really interesting, but the vast majority of them actually has enough money to invest in your companies, because if you are the CTO of Qualcomm, right, or even the senior vice president manager of some big company, you probably have 10 or 20K sitting around. So if you have an advisor who should be an investor, but he's not an investor, it actually works against you, right? Because that person effectively takes free equity in your company, but doesn't put their own money to work into your company. So be careful about advisors that should be investors. I like investors that also become advisors. And you should be the one asking them, not them asking you.
With everything you get, funding, advice, counseling, what does the entrepreneur, the startup company actually give up in the form of ownership or anything else for that matter?
Yes, that's a fantastic question. So, you know, the necessary evil of building a company is raising money, and with that, you will give up ownership, some ownership in your company to investors. Now, the world has changed, and the world has changed in the favor of all of you who've raised the hand saying they are starting companies or have started companies. It used to be that investors easily get 30%, 40, 50% of your company within a couple of rounds of funding. That world has dramatically changed. You know, the valuations have gone up, the amounts of money that you raise have decreased, so I would say it is fairly uncommon to give up more than 20% in your seed round. You know, really be thoughtful about how much money you want to raise and you need to raise to get to the next major milestone. You know, when you think about how much money to raise, usually it's like, well, you know, we need 4 engineers, they cost like 150K a year or 100K a year. You know, we want to have 2 years runway to get there. That's not how I would look at this. I certainly would. This is the bottom up that you should be doing. If you talk to investors, all that matters is your next major milestone, right? If you're a semiconductor company, when do you get a working prototype that you can send to a customer? If you are a pure SaaS company, you know, how many customers do you think you will get, you know, building a product, X many beta customers, and how long do you need to get there? Then give yourself a bit of buffer, you know, a modest amount of buffer, and raise that amount of money. It is, I think, today easier to continue raising in shorter increments than it is to raise a large amount of money. If you know, let's do the math. If you are raising, you know, $1 million on a $4 million valuation, a $5 million valuation, you basically gave up 20%. Sounds pretty reasonable. If you say, I really need $2 million to get where I want to be, I need these 8 engineers, and without those we'll never have a product. And there might be a good reason for that. You know, some of you in the room probably build real hardcore technology and need 8 engineers, but most companies don't need that much tech talent to begin with. So if you raise $2 million on maybe a $5 or $6 million valuation, you gave up tremendous amount of equity, and you probably have this money just sitting in the bank for a very long time, because you won't be spending it right away. It will take you time to hire people, will take you longer than what you thought it will take you. So really do think about the amount. General guidance, seed round, around 20%. Try to keep it lower. If you're a single founder, you have the luxury of maybe going over that. If you have 3 founders, you got to be more careful. Do the math and go 2 or 3 funding rounds out, assuming that you get diluted, you know, 15 to 30% in each round, and look how much ownership you have in a company at the end. And it's not just for you. Your ownership in a company is really important for investors, because they say, look, you're a Series C company as an ABC, so third or fourth round of funding if you had a seed round. You know, if you only own, you know, 5% of your company or 8% of your company, what's the incentive for you to stay with this company instead of going and starting a new one? Because you're already successful. You already built a company with several hundred employees. So equity ownership is really important for you, because that's going to be your bottom line at the end of the day, and for investors, because it's the incentive that you have to stay with your company.
Great. And since we're talking about different options, we've been talking about angel investing, VC, crowdfunding. What's the difference between that and actually going out and getting some type of lending arrangements with a typical lender where you actually get a loan as opposed to, you know, giving up some equity?
So lending arrangements are very, 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 very hard to get. If you have someone that is willing to lend you money, I don't really know an example where that has happened, honestly. And I've personally funded almost 90 companies. I see a lot of funding. Usually at a seed stage, it's highly unrealistic to get a loan unless it's from your parents or from your kids or from some like wealthy neighbor that has no idea what he or she is doing. Usually seed round is a loan. So just the mechanics, in most cases, a seed round is a convertible note, which is effectively a loan that converts into equity at your next round of funding. So theoretically, these are all loans, with one big difference that there's an understanding from the investor that they will never ask you for the money back, because if things don't go well, they ask you for the money back, your company is done. If things do go well, they certainly want more than their money back because they took a lot of risk. So I would say it's very, very uncommon to get loans in seed stage. It's different in A and B. Once you have revenue, you can hedge against that. It's a very different arrangement. And there's, anyone, SVB, Silicon Valley Bank, Square One, they all do this and do it really well at later stages with revenue.
Great. Thomas Cortez, thank you very much. We've got 4 seconds. Anything else you may want to add to?
No, I'll be around for a little bit. If you want to tweet me, I'm Thomas K, THOMSK. Apart from that, grab me if you want to talk a little more. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much. Thomas?